Welcome to Lock It Down Sports. I'm your host, Locke Hoover, and as always, you can follow me at Lock It Up Media. That's Lock It Up Media on X. You can also check us out at E5280 Sports. That's E5280 Sports. And today on the show, an Atlanta Braves gamble, the week that was of college football, and how the Vols looked against the Orangemen. And that's really where I want to start today's show. When Tennessee squaring off against Syracuse in week one. And of course, I'm always going to watch the Vols. But I was also intrigued to see what the offense looked like and what this team looked like as a whole. And did I come away impressed? From the first drive, from the jump, the offense looked to be in rhythm, throwing around, slinging around with Joey Aguilar. And I was really surprised they came out throwing. First drive, I figured they'd get some handoffs on, whether it be Starr, Bishop, or Peyton Lewis. I was curious to see how that rotation would start out and what the running back situation looked like as well. I figured they would get the ground game going, but boy, was I wrong. And to me, that's a promising situation. As game one, week one, he didn't even have a full off season. He didn't even have a spring game. Joe Aguilar coming in here and slinging around and looking pretty good. First drive, throwing it, stressing the field a little bit, and I was impressed. Since you did obviously that field goal to take 3-0. And also what I liked was the defense. I don't think it's going to be as good this year, or maybe early on. Definitely early on, it's going to be hurt a little bit with Jalen McCord out. And now it doesn't help with Tennessee down another injury either, with Ricky Gibson being out for a while, they said. So that's not ideal. Obviously, McCoy coming back from an ACL tear and Ricky Gibson getting hurt in the Syracuse game. So as the season progresses, you're going to have to rely on some of the young guys. Richmond looked pretty good for a true freshman coming out there at corner. Carter Hood coming out of the portal from Colorado looked really good at corner as well. Stepped up in the place of McCoy. And he's probably going to end up playing all year with Ricky Gibson out, McCoy out, one of those two corner spots. I mean, right now he's a number one corner with McCoy out and Gibson out for a while. But the front four was able to get pressure, and that was important in that game. They didn't have to bring a lot of pressure. Now, I think that's going to change in 2 weeks when we face Georgia. But defense looked good against a okay Syracuse team. Power 4 school, ACC opponent. It wasn't East Tennessee like we're playing on Saturday. So that's a little bit different. Maybe get healthy, get some guys healthy. And some of the guys that were banged up that couldn't play in the Syracuse game or got hurt during the Syracuse game, we're going to be ready for the Georgia game. Because obviously that's a big one. But the second offensive drive, Aguilar, he looked good. Threw a few high balls. Not ideal there, a few high balls as they're working down the field. But they were score, make it 10-0, and you're like, okay, this is a good offense. I'm liking what I'm seeing. Can they recapture what they did with Hendon Hooker in 22? I mean, obviously it's still wait and see, but you go, okay, this guy can make some throws. Huge upgrade over Nico, who, by the way, how poetic was that out in UCLA? He played like crap. Passed for once again under 200 yards against a big opponent, or a conference opponent, shall I say. Or they're not conference opponents anymore. I keep thinking they're both Pac-12. But, of course, UCLA ACC now. Boy, that's our Big Ten, weird to say. And then Utah back to the Big 12. But a powerful opponent, under 200 yards. Looked like the Nico from old. And we don't miss him. Tennessee's third drive, fumbled the handoff, looked like a little miscommunication, and they were driving. I think they were going to go down and score that drive, but then they get bailed out. The very next play, it's a scoop and score turnover for Hood. He picks up the fumble and scores. Then their fourth offensive drive. This is when I was like, okay, Joey Aguilar can sling it, and he's a huge upgrade. And that was like when he hit the deep ball for the touchdown with 11:14 left before half to make it 24-7. Ended up being that 73-yard touchdown pass to Stanley. And I don't know what, 30 of that, 30, 35, 40 yards of that was in the air. And you're like, bingo. This is what the offense was missing last year. This is what it needs. This is how it strives. This is how it thrives. The offense hitting that deep ball, stretching the field to open up the running lanes with the backs. And I go, okay, we're cooking. This is going to be a dangerous offense. We're going to see in 2 weeks if they can get over this Georgia hump and move the ball, because that's about the one team they've struggled against offensively. With Hooker, with Joe Milton, and of course they struggle with Nico. I mean, good grief. So it's progress. And until they can get over the Georgia hump, it's going to be a you kind of question this offense a little bit of, like, what are they doing wrong? What tweaks do they need to make? What changes do they need to make? Because that's who you got to beat. A big boy, a big opponent, a big time team now, and also hopefully later in the season. I'm talking obviously playoffs. Those sort of football teams. Fifth drive, started the 2-yard line, and then he overthrew it, which would have been a first down, and affected the drive and prevented them from getting a first down. They had to punt. Wide open guy on the left side there. I can't remember who the receiver was that was lined up over there. But once again, it's his first start at Tennessee, first offense, but he's played a lot of football. And once again, that Georgia game, that could be a big deal. He's playing Syracuse, so it's not as much the way your defense was able to get after him. But that right there could change field position. You're kicking your punt from your end zone instead of maybe the 10, 12, 15-yard line, depending on what happens the second drive in that possession. So yeah, it's the little things too. And it's the little things in big football games that matter and could make a difference. The Florida game, Oklahoma game, the Georgia game, the Alabama game, little things like that matter. And overthrow a little bit. I think that's kind of been one of his Achilles heels that he struggled with at Appalachian State. So if they can rein that in, that's very important for this offense with the little things. So that touchdown before half, and that was just straight run of football. Straight know what? Here, we're up the gut, we're on left, we're on the right. It doesn't matter whatever running back we have in it. So 2, 3, 4. I guess that was that the star. That might have been Star Thompson. Or was that Peyton Lewis? I think that was Peyton Lewis because how it was divided up. We'll get into that in a bit. And then one other thing with the game, obviously at this point, it's pretty much well in hand. But I did notice this: the 10-15 mark left in the game, fourth quarter. We throw a deep ball. There's a little underthrown that results in a punt. And once again, the little things, but also too, a little bit later in that fourth quarter, about 6 minutes left in the game, Tennessee's still playing up tempo. Instead of working the play clock down to 1 and snapping it, they're snapping it with 15, 20 seconds left, and you go, what? And to me, that's more, I think, Heupel wanted to get Aguilar more comfortable in the offense of close game. You want to run more plays, you want to run the speed, you want to run the tempo, they get the field, to run the normal offense. So in a bigger game, a bigger moment, more reps. Remember, like I said, he didn't have an off-season camp. He didn't have a spring game. He didn't have a whole lot of time to learn the offense, learn the playbook, playing the offense with the receivers or running backs, all that. So I was fine with it. And hopefully that's going to help him later on the season. I think another thing, though, too, about this game, just watching it, since he was bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic, more pushing the O-line, just better athletes all around on the field at in Atlanta, which you kind of think that with it being Tennessee, Syracuse, how the recruiting classes stack up, how they rank. Even though Syracuse did win 10 games last year, I know it's a different season, transferred, all, et cetera, all that. So that's, different quarterback for both schools, but Syracuse I don't remember where he got drafted, but he's mid-round quarterback, so that's, not bad. But I touched on this a little bit earlier, and I was curious to see how the running back spot was going to be handled. And it was pretty evenly. And I was thinking that was how it was going to be. It was evenly split up for carries, pretty much for all three backs, as they all rotated series. Star had the most carries. Star Thompson had 12 carries for 92 yards, but he played the third series. Deshaun Bishop, 11 for 82 and a touchdown. He started the game, the first series. Peyton Lewis played the second series, had 8 rushes for 38 yards. In total, that group, 31 carries, 212 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's not a surprise to me how it got distributed. And we've seen this in the past in Knoxville under Josh Heupel, similar to 22 and 23, when he had Jalen Wright, Jabbar Smalls, and Dylan Sampson all splitting carries pretty evenly. I mean, 22 is more Wright and Smalls, and Sampson, I think, had 50 or 60, but, they got him involved. And then 23, it was more split with Wright and Sampson and Small as a third back getting third amount of carries. But, it makes sense. You see why Smalls, I don't think he's even in the league, or he went undrafted, and Sampson went in the 4th round to Cleveland, and Jalen Wright, he was a mid-round pick, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, I don't remember, last year to Miami. Both burners can run. So I very could easily see that every one of these backs having 10 to 12 carries a game, and you've got 30 to 35, maybe 40, carries depending on the game, the flow, how these guys are running. I think part of the reason, I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think one, Heupel trusts Joey Aguilar, and we saw that. Him throwing the ball around, slinging it, 2 touchdowns on the day in the air. The confidence in him of, okay, this guy knows the playbook. He knows where to go with the ball. He can deliver the deep ball. He can run our offense. I think also, too, the other one is he trusts the running backs and what they can do with the ball, and will keep them all fresh during the season. I would not be surprised, because we've seen this before, if one of these backs gets hot, like just breaking tackles and cutting and juking people out, I could see them riding one of the 3 backs for the majority of the game, where you have one might have 15 carries, the other might have 7, and there might have 4. So I don't know, some distribution like that. Or maybe it's we almost have split it with 12 and 15, and the other for 2 backs, and the other one gets 4 or 2 carries. I think it's just the flow of the game, how the other opponent is responding, and I think it's good. We've seen this last few years in Knoxville, outside of last year when you had the bell cow and Dylan Sampson, who was over 1,000 rushing, SEC Offensive Player of the Year. We're not going to see that from our Tennessee running back this year, but that doesn't mean we're not going to have production on the ground. I think we will. Interesting move by the Braves, as they just claimed Ha-Seong Kim off waivers from the Rays. And in that, they're taking on $16 million next year, just $2 million for the rest of his contract this year. And like I said, $16 million potentially next year. And I say potentially because he's got an opt-out. He can opt out of his contract and become a free agent again. If he doesn't, he's on the hook for Braves on the hook with him for $16 million. It's a gamble, big gamble. He's been injured this year. Only played 24, so now 26 games. 2 in Atlanta. 214 average, 290 OBS, 2 homers, 5 RBIs, and a -1 fielding mark. And that's talking about his range currently. But there's upside. There's big upside. The Braves are interested in him last offseason, as it's been reported, as Ken Rosenthal came out and reported. And the Braves were interested and tried to trade for him at the trading deadline. So that was another thing that Ken Rosenthal recently came out and said, as the Braves were trying to trade for Ha-Seong Kim at the trading deadline. And that's just, that news. It's like, I wonder what the Braves were trying to do. We heard the Byron Buxton thing the Braves were trying to get interested in. Comes out Ha-Seong Kim they were interested in. And I think some of that is, Alex Anthopoulos started his 2026 season at the trading deadline, especially at a shortstop, because he's probably going to be the second best free agent on the shortstop market outside of Bo Bichette. You got Trevor Story, who could potentially opt out as well. How you view Story compared to Kim? Toss up. Story's more injury prone than Kim, who's been banged up. It's going to be intriguing to see what he does. And if you can get some just average shortstop play from the Braves at shortstop, talk about a major upgrade. And a 1-year deal is a great fit for the Braves and all the shortstops they potentially have in the minor league system. They drafted 3 this year, and then they've got 2 prospects already that play shortstop, some internationally guys that they like. So you got 5 potential shortstop options. Now, of course, they're all not going to stay at shortstop, but you got 5 options, 5 potential options that are maybe a year, 2, maybe 3 away. And there's been reports that Bo Bichette might not be a shortstop long term. So there's that as well. So once again, some of the gamble, and if he's average, you take that. If he repeats his second best year in the bigs, which was 11 homers, 59 RBIs, 12 steals, 251 average, 708 OPS, plays that good defense that you expect him to play, you take him because he's a good defender. Now, if he gets career year and 626 at bats, 17 homers, 60 ribs, 38 stolen bases, 260 average, 749 OPS. Of course, that's what you love. But you know what if you get something in between? What if you get 14 homers? We're just going to 60 RBIs, 20 steals, and a 255 average, and split the difference 730 OPS. Heck yeah. On a 1-year deal, talk about a huge upgrade. Interesting enough, too. So, like I said, those aren't earth-shattering, eye-popping numbers. Those are his 2 best years. So, in his down years, he's still over 2-WAR player because of his defense. Is his defense as good as Nick Allen? No. But in now 24, so in 26 games, he has more homers than Nick Allen's hit all year. And he hit one the other day, and so he's got probably 10, 12 at bats for the Braves. He has more homers than any shortstop in Atlanta this year. So just take that into consideration. If he gets hurt again, it gets tough, as he's only played 2 years of over 150 games. So there is some injury questions. I mean, if you could get 130 games from him, and maybe Nick Allen plays the rest, maybe that's your backup shortstop, or maybe you go a different direction with your bench, however you want to do that. What an upgrade. What a major upgrade. And it's an offseason move for the Braves that was made in September. They've got the shortstop covered, hopefully, if he doesn't opt out. Wait and see. He's a Scott Boras client. So Scott Boras is always going to think he can get more for his client and the advice he gives him. Now, I think some things that might help, they were talking about Jerison Profar is one of his best friends. He likes the Korean culture that is in Atlanta. And he said Ozzy Albies, which is not a surprise to me, has already been very helpful in welcoming Hyun-Sung Kim. And that does not surprise me with Ozzy. To me, Ozzy is really the glue of this organization, this club, because I think he connects so many people to this team. I mean, I think he helps connect the Latins with the Americans just because of Ozzy being able to speak 5 different languages and just the kind of person he is, the clubhouse guy that he is. He connects everybody, just his energy. Dude, he just wants to play baseball. Ozzy just wants to play baseball. That's it. He loves animals and baseball, and fish and dogs. Like that's Ozzy, and just his personality, just the connecting the team, which it's not a surprise why it's been very welcoming to Kim and just how it's all connected. So could be a boring-ish offseason for the Braves because of the moves they've already made during the at the trading deadline and on waivers. Now, something that was also kind of boring was Ohio State and Texas. And it's not a surprise to me. 2 good defenses, a lot of talent, obviously all over both rosters. Good teams that could potentially see each other again. But it's also 2 young quarterbacks. Freshman quarterback in Ohio State, and Archie's only started 2 games. Obviously, we know Archie didn't play good. He's getting crushed that he's a once-in-a-generational guy. He's a once-in-a-generational kid, talent. Oh, he's just going off name by name now because his last name is Manning and all this. Started 2 games. Louisiana Monroe, Mississippi State. That's it. This was his first real start. Oh, yeah, on the road at Ohio State against a probable playoff team. Unless the wheels fall off, a playoff team, but a probable playoff team. Relax. Let's let him play. Let's let him see. Let's see how much of a quarterback he is. He might just be an average quarterback. He might be the Manning that is the Peyton Manning, the Eli Manning type player. Let's see. I know quarterbacks and kids with his name aren't allowed to have time to develop and see if he's actually can play, and people jump to the conclusion quickly. But breathe. Let's wait. Now, something else that was kind of shocking, but not that. It's kind of shocking. I don't know. I'm just gonna say kind of shocking was Florida State, Alabama. Florida State looked good offensively with all their new transfers and quarterback, which that's one thing that's amazing to me, though. You're Florida State, and you're still having to bring in a ton of transfers. Still. Like, you're FSU. And you're still having to bring a lot of these transfers in. Which is, to me, that's strange. You'd think they would have a well-off, good enough recruiting base built up at that time, but they have it. But it worked out on Saturday, as their offense had no problem against Alabama moving the ball, as they were up 24-7 at half. Now Alabama fought back to get to a 1-score game, but not a great first half offensively. Looked better in the second, but I do have a question. Is Florida State real? Are they real this year? Because we saw it last year. They beat a pretty solid LSU team. I won't say LSU was great; they were solid last year, and we know how things ended up in Tallahassee. It was rough for Mike Norvell. So are they real? Got the Gus Malzahn, who can dial up offense, and he's an offensive guy. That's what he does. I think this is just further proof Nick Saban is a generational coach. Probably wouldn't have lost a game like that based on how Alabama played. Schedule doesn't get any easier for Alabama either. Wisconsin's usually pretty solid. Then you got the SEC schedule. You got Tennessee. You got Georgia. Auburn looked pretty good against Baylor, and it's a rivalry game. Alabama's looking like any other good to solid team where they struggle on the road, pretty good at home, but they're not this dominant team that Nick Saban was when he was there. They're not Nick Saban's Alabama. They're a good football team. Still got talent, but they're almost like the rest of college football now. Which you never said that with Nick Saban. It's all right. How are we gonna be Alabama this year? And then you got another fun one in LSU and Clemson. Really exciting. Gus Niemeyer. Excuse me, Gus, not Gus. I got Gus Malzahn on my mind. Grant Niemeyer. There we go. Nussmeyer played well. Shred Clemson. LSU's offense looked sharp. It was back and forth. It was a close, fun, good game to watch. Fortunately for Clemson, it doesn't hurt them that much. Things are a little more interesting in the ACC if Florida State's for real. Then you get back to a fun little Florida State Clemson matchup. Obviously, you got Miami, Notre Dame, too, with Notre Dame pulling that one out against the Irish. So that's three potential ACC teams that look might be a little three-way battle, which surprisingly hasn't been that way in the ACC. Or does a team like SMU sneak up like last year and they're like, oh, SMU, huh, okay, all right, Mustangs. Conference that could be a little bit more intriguing this year. And then LSU. It's going to be a tough battle in the SEC with Florida and, of course, Alabama on the docket. I can't remember if did they play Texas or not? I don't think so. I can't remember if they played Texas here or not. I can't remember off the top of my head. But probably not, since they gave Texas a cupcake schedule last year. They're just playing reverse schedules. Again, this year, just swapping home and aways. But once again, LSU is back to being real, and that's not a surprise at all. So it's fun. Obviously, first week's always fun because it's usually good schools on good school, or Power 5 versus Power 5. And then this is the lull week. I mean, not a lot of good games really this week, as it's kind of eased up after, which is typically how the schedule goes. Now, the last few years, a big, good opponent week 1, a cupcake week 2, and then it's a mixed bag of some good games, some not good games week 3 on out. So finally, college football is here. We got to enjoy it, because you'll blink and you're like, where'd it go? What happened? It's gone, sadly. So enjoy it. We got a fun schedule coming up in college football. So enjoy it, because I sure am. As always, you can follow me on X at Lock It Up Media. That's Lock It Up Media on X. I'm Locke Hoover. You've been listening to Lock It Down Sports on E5280 Sports. Talk to you next week.